Hi guys, so just having a look at how you have all got on with the multiple choice questions at the end of the lesson. I thought I'd go through some of them. These multiple choice questions are really useful because each of these options that you get here is a common wrong answer, and they're picked because people give these wrong answers when they hold some kind of misconception. In maths, we say that practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. And that scares maths teachers because if you're practicing something incorrectly, then the more you practice it, the more permanent it becomes, the harder it gets to iron that out. So what we want to do is we want to find these misconceptions by watching me do these. Get any of these that you struggled with. Feel free to skip through the video to just the ones that you struggled with, and hopefully we'll iron out those misconceptions. So first and foremost, complete this statement. 700 centimeters squared equals so many meters squared. So I need to convert a value in centimeters squared to a value in meters squared. Lots of people who haven't just spent time completing a lesson on converting areas, converting units of area, will think to themselves, okay, well I know that let's find a pen, in 1 meter there is 100 centimeters. So therefore, if I want to convert from centimeters back into meters, all I have to do is divide by 100. Now, the problem with this is that when we go into area, centimeter squared and meter squared don't have that same relationship where you're timesing and dividing by 100. In order to make sure you get it right every single time, my suggestion is that you draw a very simple diagram. And the diagram looks like this. It's just a box. And we're going to say that this represents 1 meter squared. And 1 meter squared, if we think about its dimensions, its height is 1 meter, and its width is also 1 meter. And we then convert these dimensions into centimeters. So 1 meter is 100 centimeters, and that's 100 centimeters in the width as well. So we're thinking that this is 100 centimeters this way and 100 centimeters this way. So if we imagine these as blocks, each row is going to have 100 little centimeter squared blocks, and it's going to go 100. We're going to have 100 rows of 100 centimeter blocks all the way up. So in order to work out how many centimeter square blocks you're going to have, you're doing 100 times 100. Exactly how you'd find the area of a square. You're doing 100 across, 100 up, so it's 100 times 100, which is 10,000. Okay, so we're saying that 10,000 centimeters squared is the same as 1 meter squared. That is a big difference between when we are converting centimeters and meters. So if we're converting meters squared to centimeter squared, we're timesing by 10,000. And if we're going the other way, what we're trying to do is, what we're going to have to do is divide by 10,000. So when we go back here, we're converting from centimeters to meter squared. So we're going from centimeter squared to meter squared. We're dividing by 10,000. So 700 divided by 10,000. You can do this a variety of ways. I might say 700 divided by 10,000. So I can divide both the top and bottom number here. So we're left with 7 and 100. So we've got 7 hundredths. If I was going to write that as a decimal, that would be 0.07, which is my answer here. Okay. Second question. 40,000 people to the nearest 10 attend a football match. What is the maximum number of people at the match? So 2 more pieces of information here that are really, really important. We're rounding to the nearest 10. What is the maximum number of people at the match? So it's really, really important that we think that we're looking for the maximum. So it's a larger number than 40,000 that when it's rounded down is going to round to 40,000. Just want to deal with these two here first of all. If we're rounding these to the nearest 10, so we're thinking about this 9. Is this number closer to 490, or is it closer to 500? Well, because this last digit here is a 9, it's closer to 500. So this to the nearest 10 would be 40,500. This second one, we've got 40,049. We've got 4 here is the tens. We look at this digit here and we ask ourselves, is this closer to 40 or is it closer to 50? Well, because that's a 9, we know it's closer to 50, so it's going to be 40,050. These ones, so neither of these answers can be correct because when you round them to the nearest 10, they don't give us 40,000 people. When we look at these two then, and we can see they're very, very close together, this is where our misconception comes in. So if we've got 40,005 and we're rounding to the nearest 10, now our tens unit is here, it's this last 0. And we look at the number after it and we ask ourselves, is it closer to 0 or is it closer to 10? Well, because this last digit is a 5, it's really important that you remember 5 always indicates that we're gonna round up if that's the digit afterwards. So we say that this is going to be rounded to 40,010. And I know that that is potentially something that you want to disagree with because when you divide 10 by 2, you get 5. But when you're rounding something, it's really important that if something is, it's really important that you remember that if something is the digit that you're considering rounding is a 5, that goes up. Whereas here, 40,004, that gets rounded down. So this is closer to 0 than it is to 10, and this becomes 40,000. So the correct answer here is D. Next one, hopefully relatively straightforward because we've just done something very similar. What is the area of this square in centimetres? So we've got 1 metre squared. Remember our diagram? 1 metre squared, so it's going to be 1 metre in height by 1 metre in width. We know that that is 100 centimetres, and we're asking for it in centimetres. And so to work out the area, it's 100 centimetres in width, 100 centimetres in height. If you're doing base times height to work out the area, you want 100 times 100, 100 centimetres times 100 centimetres. We're looking at 10,000 centimetres squared. And make sure, because you can see that they've got some that are just centimetres rather than centimetres squared. And it's confusing because it says what is the area of the square in centimetres. But if we're talking about area, it's always going to be the unit squared. So 10,000 centimetres squared is our answer there. The other thing I was going to say about this is it's possible to do this in millimetres. So, if we know that there are 10 millimetres in every centimetre, so in order to turn something into centimetres, we turn it into millimetres, we times it by 10. So if we're saying that this is 100 centimetres across, well, we can times that by 10 and say that it's also 1,000 millimetres. And do the same here, so that this is 1 metre squared is 1,000 millimetres times 1,000 millimetres. So if we were going to work out how many millimetres were in 1 metre squared, okay, and the answer, hopefully you've beat me to it, is 1 million millimetres squared. Okay. Next one. Which of the following is the correct error interval for 78 centimetres rounded to the nearest centimetre? Okay, so we've got 78 centimetres. And how big can we get and still round down to 78? Well, if we go to 78.5, it's going to round up. It's going to round up to 79 centimetres. As we've discussed, this 5 indicates that it's going to go higher. So it needs to be less than 78.5. Okay, so x has to be less than 78.5. Now, how far can we go below 78 in order to still round up? So the point that we're looking for there is 77.5. And if it's bigger than this, or sorry, if it's 77.5, it's still going to round up to 78 centimetres. So but it can include this as well. So x has to be greater than or equal to, and that's what that second line means, than 77.5. If it was 77.4 or 77.49 or 77.9 recurring, it's going to be moved down. So as soon as it goes lower than this, it's going to round down to 77. And this or any higher, it's going to go all the way up to 79. So, if we combine this one and this one, I suppose we can add it on here. 78.5. So we're looking at this here. Okay, so it can't be this one because there's no one of them isn't greater than. It can't be this one because they're both and including. This one here says it's got to be less than 78.5 and can include 78.5. We've just said it can't. So it can't be this one, and so it's got to be this one. 77.5, greater than or including, and less than 78.5. Now, possibly you can see that when I'm answering these questions, I'm working out my answer and then I'm looking at the answers rather than looking at the answers and thinking, right, which one is it most likely to be? Take your time by all means. And last one. Jess is 1.43 meters tall. Her height has been given to 2 decimal places. Which of these inequalities gives the error interval due to rounding? So if you're 1.43 meters and it's to 2 decimal places, it's going to be both of these ones here, and it's going to be rounding this last digit here. So if that's the digit being rounded, it means that we're talking about let's say, for example, we're given 4.32, rounding that to 2 decimal places, we're going to be left with just 1.43. So how big, again, can it get and still be rounded down? Well, it can go to 1.435. It's going to be rounded up if it's this value. So it's got to be less than that, but any less than that, and it's going to definitely go down. If it was 1.4349 to 2 decimal places, it would just be 1.43. So we can say that it's less than this, but crucially, it's not including. And how small can it get? Well, it can get 1.425. And this to 2 decimal places, because this is a 5, we'd look at the 5 here, and therefore, because it's a 5, we'd round this 2 up to a 3. So we would get 1.43. So it's going to be greater than and including 1.425. X greater than, but not including 1.435. Okay, so these ones here, so to 2 decimal places, 1.44 is always going to round, to 2 decimal places, it's just going to stay at 1.4, so it definitely can't be this one. 1.45, even worse, going way too high for us. 1.425 greater than or including, and less than 1.435. That's our answer that we've just put. What's the difference here? Less than or including 1.435. We said that this would round too high. Hopefully that makes it a bit clearer and you didn't watch the whole thing, because I'm pretty sure I've gone on way too long. But if you do have any more questions or there are anything else you'd like me to go through, please let me know and I will endeavour to do so. Hope it's useful, guys. See you all later.